Hey guys, it's Merce. Welcome back to Harpies in the Trees, where I review horror books with a supernatural focus. I don't know if it's just me, but last week felt so chaotic for me. Hence my shirt, chaotic. It was just sort of the theme. I don't know, I got back from vacation and I thought my temp job schedule was Wednesday through Friday, but it was actually Monday through Wednesday. And so they're calling me on Monday, where are you? And I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And they were like, oh, no problem, just come in Thursday to Friday. And I was like, okay. So then the next day they call me and they're like, where are you? And I'm like, what? It was actually just a communication issue on their part. So it was just like a really rough start to the week. I don't know. I just kind of felt like everything was out of whack. I don't know. Maybe that was just me. Maybe that was you too. Who knows? But today we are going to be reviewing two books that I've been very eager to review, and that is Mina and the Undead by McCaw and a Darcy Coates book, The Folcroft Ghosts. I also have a question for you guys really quickly. I have already finished Hospital Hill and Plank Children. I'm reading this again. I finished it on vacation and I'm reading it again because I'm obsessed. But anyway, these were from these Scary Locations TBR, and I just wanted to know if you would prefer if I did a paired review for two books at a time, or you want me to just do a wrap up of all of the Scary Locations books. So just let me know. And either way, good with me. Ophelia's Falling says, I didn't like Dear Laura. Having been stalked for 10 years, way back when, during a time when stalking laws didn't exist and police had better things to do, the character complying with the stalker did not seem realistic for me. But I hated it. I could not identify with the victim at all, and her reactions for me were unrealistic. I can definitely agree with Ophelia's Falling in some parts here, because there were choices that Laura did make that I felt was maybe not the best choice, and there had been possibly other avenues to go besides the avenue that she decided to go down. But for myself, I kind of just was chalking it up to like everyone sort of acts differently when they're up against a corner. So we didn't really get to know a lot about Laura's background, like her parents or anything. So I don't think we really got a good sense of like who she was and why she would make the decisions that she did, besides the fact that, she wanted some information from this stalker. But I think this is a good discussion that comes from the book, because then we can talk about, stalking in general and also people's experience with stalking, how traumatic and horrible it really is. Okay, let's go to the book reviews. This is a story about two kids who are forced to go and live with their grandparents in the middle of nowhere in some rural area. They're there because their mother is sick and there's no one else to take care of them, but they've never met these grandparents before. They seem decently nice. The grandmother likes to cook and bake and seems very, very intent on just constantly making them food all the time, hugging them and touching them and stroking their hair. Very, very lovable. Their grandfather is kind of more the strong, silent type, doesn't say much, just kind of has a few moans and groans and guttural responses here and there. The house that they live in is very large for just two people. It's 2 floors and has a lot of rooms, many of them which are locked. The property is pretty vast because it's in the middle of nowhere, so there is a lot of space to run around and explore. But the first night they're there, their grandmother asks them for their cell phones. There's no service, so there's no point in you even having the phones. I'll keep them safe for you. She takes their phones and she puts them up on top of the refrigerator. And this becomes a tiny red flag for Tara, who's 15 years old. And she starts thinking. As the days go on, things seem to get a little weirder and progressively a little weirder, until a huge storm hits. All of the power is out in the house. But there's something really weird about this. The grandparents are acting pretty weird. Everything just seems off. So this story pretty much sucked me in the very beginning. Like, I was just really invested in these two kids, these two teenagers, Tara and Kyle, who are kind of going through this really weird situation, which is totally relatable. I think we've all, like, you know, maybe had to stay with a relative overnight for some reason and you didn't really know them, and it's really strange, even though like you're related and you know that you're family, but it's a strange house and strange people, and the you know, the way they run their house might be strange to you. So it's this very relatable, simple situation where these kids are coming to stay with their grandparents. So this is a YA horror story. It could be middle grade. I think it could. But let's just say it's YA for now. I think the most harrowing thing about the Folcroft Ghosts was just sort of like the way that Darcy wrote the grandmother, May. It was just pitch perfect, I thought. Just really good. Kind of brings to mind like the saccharine, cloying sweetness of, like, you know, maybe like the witch in the gingerbread house or something. Hans and Gretel, you know, I feel like there might be some connection there, maybe, but she really just nailed it. I think that was like what was so fascinating, was this grandmother character. So things started to get pretty wild. What I really liked about this story is that it's definitely supernatural, of course. And it's really interesting. I think the way that the two kids are finding things out and finding out information feels very believable. The supernatural aspects do come off as kind of creepy. The grandparents are definitely creepy. If you liked that movie, The Visit by M. Night Shyamalan, you will definitely like this story. It's not the same story, but it's the same vibe. Creepy grandparents. And so at first I thought, you know, it was gonna go one way or another, you know, but it didn't. It went into some place completely unusual, and it was pretty, I think it was a little bit darker than I was expecting, which was always really nice. Like, I always appreciate that. And you know, there's a lot of supernatural stuff that's happening, so the only thing that I didn't really like was the ending. And the reason why I didn't like the ending was because, you know, it's a Darcy Coates book, so we all know that the endings are going to be tied up pretty neatly. And I really don't have a problem with that with her books, because I just love them. I love the way that she writes them, because they're these creepy, cozy, okay? It's creepy, cozy. So that's what this book is going to be. But in this instance, though, it was like all of this really interesting, kind of creepy and weird stuff is happening. It's a very good story. And then we get to the end and it was just like, it was so rushed. And I just didn't really understand why. Like, there were still some things that I wanted from the story, which, you know, I wanted a little bit more discourse, a little bit more time with some characters, to sort of flesh out the ending, to sort of make it feel like a perfectly rounded meal. It's like when you're having dinner and you think like, okay, you're gonna tell the waitress when she comes by that you're gonna want some dessert, but then she just comes over and she slaps down the bill and she's like, let me know when you want me to take it. But it's still worth the read, because I think it was really good. This does also come with 4 additional short stories. So I did not read that because I want to read these for my 60-second short story reviews instead. Mina is 17 years old and she is visiting her older sister, Libby, in New Orleans. Libby works at this really cool horror attraction mansion. It's a place where you can come in groups and get a tour with a guide like Libby, where she takes you through different rooms that have setups and actors and sound to represent famous horror movies from the 1990s down. And that is because This book takes place in the 1990s, 1994, I believe. And Mina is a huge horror fan, so this seems really cool to her, and she also gets to spend time with her sister. They have a very complicated relationship. There are a lot of things that have not been dealt with between the two of them, so there's a lot of tension, there's a lot of awkward silence, so there's a lot of just stuff they need to deal with together, and Mina is hoping that she can spend this time with her sister and they can work on their relationship. But as soon as Mina gets there, before she's even really able to absorb the city and the culture and everything that is New Orleans, she comes across a dead body in the horror mansion during working hours, and this body belongs to one of the workers there. This sets off Mina and her sister and all the other employees that work at the horror mansion to try and figure out who did this and why would they pick someone from the horror mansion. Mina and the Undead was sent to me by Amy McCaw and her team. Thank you so much, I appreciate it. When it came with a little package and it had some really cool stuff in it. It had this like New Orleans postcard, and it's actually from Libby to Mina. And it says, "Hey sis, I know things have been pretty weird between us lately and I want to make it up to you. Check out the flyer and let me know what you think. Could be fun. Love, Libs." And I don't know where I put the flyer, but the flyer is for an event in the book called Fang Fest. And Fang Fest is a pretty important part of the story, so it was really cool to have that little flyer. I had it over there somewhere, I'm not sure what happened to it. And also this really cute charm came with it. It's like little vampire teeth. It says your horror movie will start momentarily. It was so cute. I also think it came with a bookmark too, but I was just already like kind of enchanted with that. I love things from books and games and movies that kind of come into reality in some way, so I just love artifacts like that. So Mina is definitely a YA horror book. Sometimes I feel like YA horror can have a lot more like depth to it. So I do like that aspect, but what I don't normally like is I'm not really too much into like teenage romances and relationships and stuff like that. Not really my thing. But luckily in Mina, it's not really too heavy. Mina does have a love interest there. It starts pretty early on in the book. And she's really funny about it because she's very thirsty. So she's always making these like really hilarious observations, I guess, that are so funny. Mina's an interesting character to read because she's funny, she's kind of sensitive, she's very thirsty, she's also very aware of her own feelings. It is kind of a coming of age story, you know, with like this summer romance, and then like we have this mysterious murder that happens, and the relationship between her and her sister is always kind of in flux. And there's a lot that Mina kind of discovers about herself. So it's really cool, especially on this backdrop of New Orleans. The story it kind of felt a little bit like Sabrina the Teenage Witch, like the Netflix version a little bit, with not as much fantasy, but kind of like in that vibe, I think. So if you liked that, you'll definitely love this. It also points out tons of 90s nostalgia. So if you're a 90s kid, then you will definitely recognize a lot of stuff. If you want to see how 90s it gets, let me show you. We settled onto Libby's bed and I took in the familiar posters of Bikini Kill, No Doubt, and other bands, alongside torn images of beautiful women like Kelly from Saved by the Bell. I smiled at the sight of her old troll collection crowded on a shelf, with every hair color from lime green to deep purple. And there's just like a bunch of that stuff in here. I was so surprised. I was like, where's Garfield? That's all I care about. And if you loved Interview with a Vampire, you will be very pleasantly surprised because that movie is pretty much a real powerful theme in this book.
Whatever happened to Lestat, I do not know.
It does have some diary entries, and these are the type of diary entries that I don't really enjoy that much, but luckily they're not very long. They are pretty short, so that wasn't too bad. So my only criticism is that it does tend to drag towards the end a bit, I felt, And also, it's not scary. So if you're thinking that this is going to be scary, it's not really scary. And I don't think it's really meant to be scary. I think it's more kind of like, it's a bit pulpy. It's a bit fun. There are a few scenes that are kind of gory. A few commenters did tell me that this is actually going to be a series. So there's going to be more books about Mina and the Undead, which makes a ton of sense. Because the way that it ends, there are some storylines that are not finished, you know, that are kind of still in the background. So hopefully we get to see those in the future books. So that was the review. I hope you enjoyed them. Let me know your thoughts on these books if you've read them. And if you are a Lestat or a Louis fan, if you like this video, please like and comment below. I would appreciate that so much. If you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button if you want notifications when a new video goes up. You know what to do. Thank you so much for spending your free time with me. Please take care of yourselves, look out for each other, and I will talk to you next time.